family incomes between $50,000 and just under $100,000 say they're living paycheck to paycheck.
The amount of propaganda that exists to convince working class people to align with billionaires is diabolical.
We are the richest country in the world, right? Right.
You can see the title is Why Government Should Stop Raising the Minimum Wage. The article pretty much goes on to say that, well, there's other ways, better ways to fight poverty.
Poor working class white men tend to support and rally behind rich white men.
It's also true that $100,000 is not a lot in buying power today.
It would only cost $30 billion to end homelessness in America. It would only cost another $40 billion to end hunger in America.
Well, it is true that prior to redlining, a lot of the people who lived in the neighborhoods that became redlined were poor white people because it was based on poverty and not so much race.
If you are born into poverty, the odds of you leaving poverty and actually attaining substantial wealth are incredibly low.
$167,000 a year. Do you know what that number means?
Because we don't comprehend how much $1 billion is because that's not everyday life for us.
Rent in the United States is about $19,488 a year.
A lot of Americans have a job, steady paycheck, earning income every single week. But somehow the wage is not keeping up. Because right now, a lot of people are going through financial devastation right now. The paycheck is not keeping up anymore. Everything is increasing every single day. Because what's going on? When this gonna stop? Man, I'm telling you guys, we need to do something. As all Americans team up to work together, solve this problem. Also, everybody gonna be homeless in one day. Poverty gonna keep on increasing in America, and it's not gonna end up good. But if you are new here, do me a favor, subscribe, comment, likes, and hype me up so the channel can keep on growing. All right, let's check out this video.
Work, pay bills, be broke, repeat. 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 Work, pay bills, be broke, repeat.
Think about it this way. More and more people cannot afford their mortgages. So let's say the ultra wealthy in the banks and government doesn't want to step in and help us. Okay, that's that many more people out on the streets. That means they're going to organize. And we're going to organize and come together to get resources. And who are we going to go after? That would cause civil unrest. So we need to get our basic needs met. So that means we would be going after the banks and people of wealth. So it's not looking good for any situation. And they need to wake up to this because this is a very real reality. Because there is too many Americans right now who are starving, who do not have homes, who are getting angrier and angrier and angrier by the hour. Not day, by the hour.
Donald Trump is about to eliminate the middle class in America. And that's a good thing. Because if he can get rid of the Internal Revenue Service, and this taxation has taken advantage of blue-collar, hard-working Americans for over 100 years now. If he can get rid of that agency, then the middle class, the lower class, they will be able to keep all their money that they work hard for every day of the week. And the lower class will become the middle class. And the middle class will become the upper class. And the upper class will become the upper class. Every American will win. And you will gain financial freedom that you never had before. And you will be liberated from a DC establishment that's been holding you back for decades upon decades. America's about to be free again. America's about to be great again.
The amount of propaganda that exists to convince working class people to align with billionaires is diabolical. Instead of looking at the conditions that created the poverty, the people at the top spend a lot of time and money making sure that people internalize a worldview that serves the dominant class. Modern economies are structured in a way that requires scarcity to function. Poverty is manufactured. The resources to eliminate poverty have existed for a very long time. There's a reason why they have not been eliminated. A significant portion of it is structurally produced and maintained so people at the top stay in power. We did not always live like this, and that is what humans need to deconstruct. Most famines, for example, are not caused by lack of food. They're caused by failures of distribution and political will. I also think people do not realize that for a billionaire to exist, thousands of people needed to generate a surplus value that they did not receive. The people that align with this thinking are going against their best interests, because time and time again, we see more equal societies do better in virtually every metric: mental health, physical health, crime, life expectancy, social mobility, education, for everyone, even the wealthy. That inequality itself is the pathogen. It is not just the poverty.
We are the richest country in the world, right? Right? Why are there 35 million people in this country that live below the poverty line and can't live anywhere because they're below the poverty line?
We broke.
CDC affordability survey finds a growing number of Americans say they are living paycheck to paycheck. 63% describe their personal financial situation that way, compared to 59% just a few months earlier. The financial pressure extends well beyond lower income households. In the most recent CNBC poll of more than 2,500 adults in mid-June, nearly two-thirds, 64% of those with family incomes between $50,000 and just under $100,000 say they're living paycheck to paycheck. And 41% with six-figure incomes up to just under $250,000 are feeling that pressure. Meanwhile, 81% of those whose family incomes are less than $50,000 cite the paycheck squeeze. And that's compared to only 12% with incomes of $250,000 or more.
I thought this same thing too when I was like 16 years old in high school, and I didn't understand how the system actually worked and how it works to keep people in poverty. If you are born into poverty, the odds of you leaving poverty and actually attaining substantial wealth are incredibly low. And that is because remaining in poverty, it doesn't directly correlate only to someone making poor decisions. It correlates more so to the fact that these people have less opportunities. And because they live in areas that are so low income that even when they have a job, they can't even afford to get by, crime is what people turn to. Because if someone knows they're not going to be able to afford to live and they have kids at home that they need to somehow take care of, they're going to figure out how the fuck they can do that. These are the sort of circumstances that capitalism seeks to create so that a select few can be incredibly rich, while the majority of everybody else struggles to stay afloat.
All right, you have to check this out. This is an article that was released just a couple days ago by The Economist. As you can see, the title is Why Government Should Stop Raising the Minimum Wage. The article pretty much goes on to say that, well, there's other ways, better ways to fight poverty. They use Germany and Britain as an example to say that, well, here's two countries that are looking to raise the minimum wage and already have, and look how they've turned out. Which is a totally absurd example to make, because Germany and Britain pretty much outperform the US in quality of life and everything outside of the GDP that they make. And the problem with this article is it's pushing what the billionaires and the elite class say, which is that this is not our problem, this is the poor people's problem. That, oh, the billionaires can make all the money they want off your back all day long, but if you ask for more than $7.25 per hour, then you're just crazy. And the article even admits in the first paragraph that, well, the US hasn't raised their minimum wage past $7.25, but it might happen someday, so we should be worried. So instead of worrying about how the billionaires and the elites in our own government are taking advantage of working class and poor people across the country, we're going to worry about how, you know what, let's not raise the minimum wage because it might give us too much freedom. This is why it's important for us now more than ever to stand up to these billionaires, stand up to elites, and tell them what we're owed. We have to fight for it, guys. And if you want to fight, let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.
Poor working class white men tend to support and rally behind rich white men, thinking that proximity to power and whiteness will advance them in a meaningful way, instead of working with other marginalized communities in the working class to advance policies that will actually help them. But I have news for them. They're not getting invited to the parties. They're not getting invited on the yacht.
$1,000 used to mean you made it. Now it barely covers rent, taxes, and insurance in major cities. Same number, totally different life. That gap is what people are angry about. Am I wrong? Or does this feel familiar?
I saw someone on TikTok say that $100,000 is not a lot of money. Seriously?
Yes, seriously. And let me tell you why. I'm Portia Wood, your favorite generational wealth planning attorney. And while what this creator is saying is true, so go back and watch her whole video, it is also true because two things can be true at the same time. It is also true that $100,000 is not a lot in buying power today. Gen Xers, Gen Zers, Millennials, we were all sold this American dream that we needed to attain six figures or $100,000 in salaries. So we went to these schools, we took on debt to reach this American dream of $100,000. So while we're growing up, $100,000 is the goal, right? You can buy a house, you can put food on the table, you can have nice cars, etc. Well, no one tells you that $100,000 in the 1980s is actually $365,000 in today's dollar, meaning you would have to make $365,000 today to have the equivalent of the buying power of someone in the 1980s, or approximately $178,000 for the equivalent of someone having $100,000 in the 2000s. It's okay to be mad.
$167,000 a year. Do you know what that number means? $167,000 a year would be considered middle class in America. But if you take a look at this post, $60 an hour, literally, you're making what boomers were making back in the 1970s. I've always said this, it doesn't matter if you're making over $100,000. Six figures is nothing nowadays. You can look it up. I Google searched it. Literally, $167,000 puts you at middle class. So essentially, if you're not making six figures nowadays, you're broke. Like seriously, you need to have income of $100,000 or more, or you're broke. Interest rates have gone up, skyrocketed. Insurance rates, taxes, everything. And just because you're making, just say gross, $100,000, you're not making $100,000 after taxes and everything else. Yeah. What are your thoughts in the comments? $167,000 is considered middle class in the United States. I'd like to know your thoughts.
I made a frickin' oopsie. What the frick happened? Well, I went to college and I got a degree and I don't really like what it's doing for me, so. Well, that's only $60,000. Don't worry about it. We'll get rid of it. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I've been physically breaking my body every day since I turned 15. I skip meals to make sure that the electricity stays on. All right, close your eyes and stick out your hand. Okay. What are those? They're called opiates. They make your back hurt less. Now get back to work, bitch.
If you spent $100,000 every day, it would take you 27 years to spend $1 billion. $1 billion could feed 2.5 million people for an entire year. If you stacked up dollar bills on top of each other up to $1 billion, it would be 68 miles high and reach outer space. If you make $50,000 a year, it would take you 20,000 years to make $1 billion. You could buy 1,000 homes worth $1 million each for $1 billion. So hypothetically, let's just say for one moment that Tesla, who made $97.7 billion last year, paid 35% in taxes like I do here in Arkansas. Tesla would have to pay in $34 billion. $1 billion feeds 2.5 million people for a year. $1 billion. And we would have 34. Can you imagine what we could do? And the thing about it is Tesla is low man on the totem pole. What if we did Amazon? Amazon in 2023 had $574 billion in income. 35% of that? Who needs Snap? That would be Snap. You and I would not have to lose money out of our paycheck to pay for Snap because one single corporation, Jeff Bezos and Amazon, could fund the entire Snap program. This is why I feel like more people aren't mad enough. It's because we don't comprehend how much $1 billion is because that's not everyday life for us. Nobody becomes a billionaire by being an honest, hardworking person. So when I hear people say things like, oh, capitalism, they earned their money. They worked really hard. No, baby. You can work really hard and make $1 million. You can work really hard and make $50 million. When you get up to the $1 billion status, you are extorting people. You are not paying people livable wages. You are not a good person. The more you know, the more you grow.
Hey, so you know how the government says that we don't have the money to pay for social programs? And they always say, who's going to pay for it? Where's the money going to come from? Well, they're lying to you. Because it would only cost $30 billion to end homelessness in America. It would only cost another $40 billion to end hunger in America. And then it would cost $70 billion for free higher education for Americans. On top of that, if we added another $100 billion, we could end the majority of hunger in the entire world. You want to take a guess at how much money we've given the blue and white country this year? $380 billion. We've given them almost double what it would take to give every American a roof over their head, food in their belly, and higher education for everybody. And do you want to know why politicians say, oh, we can't afford to take care of our Americans, but we can't afford to give the blue and white country money? It's because our politicians are all in the pocket of a foreign nation. They tell you that we can't afford that, but in fact, we can afford it. We've always been able to afford it. They just lie to you. They get us all focused on trans bathrooms, or they get us focused on vaccines, or they get us focused on culture war things to distract us from the reality of just looking at the numbers and going, oh, we can't afford this. It's actually super easy to afford to solve basically every problem in our society. But no, it's more important that a foreign nation that's the size of like North Carolina gets way more money to solve their problems for their society, for their citizens, but not for ours. Our homeless veterans, they gotta stay on the street. Sorry, the blue and white country needs money. So anyway, the next time you hear a politician say we can't afford it, just know they're lying. They're lying. Thank you all so much for watching, and I appreciate your face.
Well, it is true that prior to redlining, a lot of the people who lived in the neighborhoods that became redlined were poor white people because it was based on poverty and not so much race. The 1930s New Deal era measures taken by the Federal Housing Administration implemented redlining, and the purpose was to provide housing opportunities to middle and lower class white people. So the poor white people who lived in those neighborhoods were able to move out and into the suburbs. And that is how the inner city became the inner city. And this was perpetuated by measures like the GI Bill. So ultimately, it was about segregation and providing opportunities to middle and lower class white people that were not made available to Black people.
Federal poverty rate for a family of 3 is $25,800. The average one-bedroom rent in the United States is about $19,488 a year. That's right, you have to spend over 75% of your gross income on rent alone to share a bedroom with your child. My name is Christopher Russell. I want to be the next president of the United States for this reason and many, many others. I have a law degree from Wake Forest University, and I held the top secret clearance with the Department of Defense and the Department of State. You may have heard that we're supposed to spend 30% of our gross income on housing and no more. So for a family of 3 to spend 30% of their income on a one-bedroom apartment, they need to make $64,960 a year. That's the real poverty rate. I'm thinking to myself, how can it be that with the child tax credit giving between $3,000 and $3,600 per child, how is it possible that we can cut the child poverty rate in this country by 50%? A household with 2 children is getting a maximum of $7,200. $7,200 is a lot of money to come all at once, but it is not a lot of money when you are poor. That's because children are living in impoverished houses. Families that make so little money, they can barely get through every single month. This is an abomination. We must do something about it. When the wreckage is finally cleared from this flaming garbage pile of an administration, it will be up to us, you and me, to make good policy decisions, to be absolutely clear on the stakes, on what the least of us need from us. People like me who can't afford to buy a house, people like me who have student loans, people like my parents when I was a child who got WIC and food stamps, 40 million of whom are at risk of losing their benefits because of this government shutdown. These people, regular working class Americans, are the ones who need help the most. And we owe it to them. We owe it to every one of us not to live in such a criminally impoverished state in the richest country in the history of the world. We can do better, and we will. This is a message of hope in a dark, dark time. We will do better. Follow me.
Even with the vouchers, poor people are not attending the same private schools as the wealthy. The system is designed so this doesn't happen. Let me give you an example. We'll use Florida. I think in Florida, the voucher is about $8,000. Some of the private schools I'm talking about, they start at like $40,000 and go up from there. All right. So to someone that's poor or even solidly middle class, $8,000 is not going to put a dent in a $40,000 tuition, right? They're not going to make up the difference. However, for someone that's rich, they're going to pay for that tuition anyways, right? but they're basically taking $8,000 away from the public school system and just lining their pockets. They don't need the money. They were going to pay for it anyways. Why are they doing that, right? It's basically just a tax cut. Some of these schools don't even accept vouchers, but in some cases like Florida, right, where there's no income limits to the voucher program, you will have schools that accept it, and it's just a tax cut for the wealthy.
They love to say poor people live off the government, but if we being real, the government lives off of the poor. Every single check you get, taxes come out way before you even see the check, right? That is your money funding programs, systems, and salaries that barely give you anything back. Yet when poor people ask for help, suddenly there's not enough in the budget. Okay, cool. I want to go ahead and state 5 ways the government lives off of the poor. 1, they tax everything from your paycheck to your groceries. Even sales tax hit people who have it the least the most. 2, inflated rent and housing systems. They control zoning and property tax, then underfund public property so that private landlords can charge more. It's all one big trap. 3, student loans. They push education for all, and then they profit off the debt of the poor students. I have to understand, for the people who can afford it, when y'all pay up front, that's cool and all, like when y'all pay up front, but they make more when they charging the poor students interest. 4, food programs and benefits. Now, people act like food stamps are free money, but those are funds that are already recycled from your taxes. You already paid for it. What you think, the government taking money out they pocket and giving it to you? And 5, fines, fees, and tickets. From court costs to late fees, small mistakes turn into big money for the states. So, when somebody says the poor live off the system, remind them that we fund the system. Low-income housing, food stamps, help with school, all of that is earned. You paid for that through every check they took from you, bro. So please stop getting on here just acting like they just giving us something for nothing. And don't say everybody pay taxes, because they in that office giving billionaires tax cuts right now.
They want you to be angry at the poor, to direct your attention away from the problems with the uber rich. That's what it comes down to. Poor people are not the enemy. People needing assistance from their government is not the problem. The problem is that corporations and billionaires don't pay their fair share of taxes. I don't care if there's laws or things written into tax code that allow people and corporations to take tax cuts. That's wrong. End of story. That shouldn't exist. Small businesses shouldn't pay a higher percentage of their yearly income than billion-dollar corporations. That shouldn't be a reality, but we know that that's fact. Stop being angry at the lower class of the United States and direct your attention to the corporations and the billionaires. Get angry at the right people.
The federal poverty line for a family of 4 is about $31,000 annually. For one person, it is about $17,000. The real cost of having those babies that you can't afford is that it's going to send you to an early grave. And I know that sounds like hyperbole, but I'm telling you that it is not. If you have one kid and you're living under $21,640, you are living in poverty. That is the definition of poverty. Poverty is not a mindset. You cannot think your way out of poverty. You cannot hope your way out of poverty. You need a plan. And the number one thing that's going to get you out of poverty is having a skill or some type of education, formal education, one of the two, and limiting the number of babies that you have. Having more babies is more likely to send you into poverty And the stress of living in that poverty is more than likely going to send you to an early grave. A man is not a plan. You cannot depend on them to take care of those kids. I'm not absolving men, but I'm talking about what happens in the real world and not some internet, oh, they should show up. They don't. Only have the number of babies that you yourself can afford and emotionally and psychologically take care of.
Black women is the reason why the black community stay in poverty. I guess I ruffled some feathers with that topic, didn't I? But it's true. I know a lot of people don't want to admit it, but it's true. It is. They was like, it's the man's fault. How is it his fault? It is his fault because he don't take care of them. But some of them. But it's also our fault because we have the choice who we allow inside of our bodies unless they take advantage, right? But most of the time they don't. We allow it. Okay? So once we get pregnant, we used to have the choice to either keep the baby or send it back to God and name it heaven. Right? Okay, cool. So if we decide to keep the child, knowing that mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, financially, we cannot take care of that child, we are then putting ourselves back in poverty. So if the government did not help us the way that they did, could you be able to afford 7 children? No. Do you have the car to fit 7 children?
For all of y'all in my comments saying poor people shouldn't have children, do you realize that every middle class person in America is one crisis away from poverty? If you're upper middle class, you're 2 crises away from poverty. I get that most of you commenting are young adults who do not have kids. And we live in a society that is really antagonistic and hateful toward kids, and also toward poor people. And we also live in a society where we are constantly chasing wealth. Yay, capitalism. But let me tell you, as a 45-year-old, all it takes is one big medical bill, getting laid off from your job, one serious illness, one car accident, and your family can get tipped into poverty. So stop thinking that y'all middle-class white kids can look down your noses at people in generational poverty and think that you have more of a right to have kids than they do. And the privilege you're leaning into is incredibly precarious.
I'm gonna go ahead and say this. There's so many programs, benefit programs and whatever for broke people, right? And the qualifications and requirements for those programs are that you stay broke, right? So they keep them with health care, a little bit of money, food stamps, whatever, right? But zero support for families that work, but still can't afford to survive. I'm currently making the most I've ever made. And it is so hard. So hard. And I have to feed the kids.
You want to know why the middle class is dying? I think the biggest reason is because cost of living keeps going up, but everybody's ability to make income keeps staying the same. So the middle class is being swallowed up into a poverty class. Because the average income for an American-born citizen is $56,000 a year. $56,000 a year! And I think that's before taxes too. So you're only taking home maybe like $48,000. That's $4,000 a month. I mean, most people's rent is $1,000 or $1,200 a month. How do people even survive off of that? That's poverty. So that's one of the reasons why the middle class is dying, because it's turning into a poverty class.
So you hear all these people complain about no more food stamps, man, no more SNAP benefits. Blah, 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 blah. The government's taking money away from the poor people. I hear all that shit, man. But you really think about it, and if you came from, poverty, fucking making minimum wage or less than it just a few years ago, and now you make a lot more now, whatever, you know what I'm talking about, man. $15 an hour is a lot of money. $15 an hour is a lot of money when you don't have to pay for your medical. You ain't got to pay for your fucking food. You ain't got to pay for your housing, all of it. Hell, you ain't even got to really pay for your daycare. Back when I was making only like fucking $16, $17 an hour, and I had 2 kids that were both in daycare, we were paying $80 a week with ELC. And we thought we were getting robbed then. We just ended the summer, man. I had 3 kids at this daycare, and I was paying $580 a week. I was like, what? $580 a week, and I had to pay it. I had to go to work. Man, y'all don't understand. I think a lot of people don't understand how much money $15 an hour is with government help. Okay, like people hear, you may not hear it all the time, but the middle class is a trap. Either you're poor, where you meet all the required criteria for Medicaid, food stamps, affordable housing, and then you're just living on that shit, or you make so much money that you don't need to worry about money at all. If you're anywhere in the middle, we're like upper middle. Like, I ain't there yet to where like just as got bills that I had to fucking get, fucking student loans and shit like that, so I can be able to have a mortgage and do all the stuff I got now. But eventually, when all this stuff is paid for, like I got one vehicle that's almost paid for, another one that I'm working on. When all that shit's gone, I think I'll feel like that. But right now, dude, it feels like when I was making 40 grand a year, I think me and my wife did the most before what we're making now. Our income blew up. We made 45 grand combined income for the year. And I was like, damn, we killed it. We killed it. So if you know, you know, man. I'm not even going to talk about it. Yeah, inflation and all that shit had a part to do with it. But I'm saying when the government was helping you out with your food, with your medical, with your housing, with your daycare, all the big shit that you didn't even know how big it was because the government was helping you. Now that it's gone, even though you make 4, 5, 6 times more per year, it feels worse. Okay. You know what I'm talking about. And that's all I'm trying to get at, man. They don't know how good they really got it. And all I'm seeing now is people get on the internet, these females mostly. Oh, if they cut my food stamps card off, I'm going to just rob them. I'm going to just walk out the store with the buggy full of stuff. Okay, good. Do it. Please do it. Record yourself doing it. I would love to see those videos, okay? Just please post it. Post on your page before you go to the jail. Man, yeah, $2,000, $3,000 is a lot of money for kids. Unless you got a bunch of older kids, like teenagers or whatever, 2, 3 teenagers, I can see $1,000 a month. But if you got little itty bitty kids, and that's what you see these videos, these chicks talking about this shit, they got like 4 or 5 different kids who were all like the same fucking age almost. They all look different, but they're all like the same age. I don't think no more than fucking a couple $100 to get fucking like government beef and cheese is all you really need. Again, if you're getting food stamps that the government's paying for, it should be the lowest of quality. It should be the bare minimum nutrition. Everything should be fucking bland. Okay, you should get cans of Spam, cheese, milk, eggs. That's pretty much it. Okay, you shouldn't be able to go and buy whatever the fuck you want. Yeah, man, no more sodas, no more fucking crab boiled dinners and shit. It should be government beef, cans of Spam, milk, eggs, cheese, block cheese. Okay, not shredded cheese, and give a motherfucker a box of MREs. That's what they need. If you do that, then they won't want to be on food stamps anymore. They'll try to get off the program. They'll try to get a job that makes more money, pays them more, and they won't have to. If I got $2 grand a month, I'm buying crab and Wagyu beef every fucking time. Every time. Okay? Seafood boils and Wagyu beef burgers is all I'm going to eat if I got $2 grand in food stamps.
Strategist Michael Green has a thought-provoking and somewhat controversial article on how our poverty line is outdated and how we need to update it. His thesis, which he supports with data, is that if you're a family of 4 earning less than $140,000 in gross income, then you are technically living below the real poverty line in America. Basically, he's saying the middle class is screwed. Shocking, right? Never heard that before. Why is this? Well, first we have to understand what is the poverty line. The U.S. poverty line was created in 1963 and is calculated as 3 times the minimum food diet as adjusted for inflation. But since 1963, I don't know if you've noticed, but things have changed a little bit in the States. Housing, healthcare, college, and childcare costs have exploded, and women have these things called rights now, which angers some people, weirdly enough. The labor model has also shifted to 2 households needing an income to provide the same standard of living that 1 income used to provide. So in a 2-income household, that means childcare becomes mandatory. All of this means food is no longer 33% of household spending. It's not even close. It's closer to 5 to 7%. And this is why the poverty line benchmark is messed up, and why Michael argues that the minimum income needed to participate in society is closer to $140,000. Again, he defines participation as being a family with 2 kids. There's a lot of arguing and nitpicking over some of the assumptions Michael made, for instance, childcare costs being $32,000 a year or $1,350 per month per kid. Some people say that's way too much. Others are actually saying, hey, that's way less than I'm paying for my childcare. But the point of Michael's article is that the income range between $40,000 and $140,000 creates something he aptly calls the valley of death. What is this? It's where a family of 4 is rich enough to not get subsidies, but at the same time, they are not rich enough to not feel the effects of losing those subsidies. Below $40,000 in gross income, and the government provides enough of a safety net to help make a material difference with families. Over $140,000, and you're making enough to where subsidies wouldn't make a material difference. Some people argued on that point too. But Michael's point is that our entire safety net system creates a trap for anyone trying to climb out of poverty. As your income rises above $40,000, your benefits disappear faster than your wage increases. There are many other data points that we're seeing today that corroborates how broken the poverty line benchmark is. For instance, the Atlanta Fed estimates that the median home price has risen more than a third since 2021 to almost $400,000. And for that to be considered affordable, a household would have to earn $120,000. But the median household income in the US is closer to $85,000. Which begs the question, why not change the poverty line benchmark? Because right now, it's easy to show this chart and say, hey, we're solving the poverty crisis, instead of admitting that there's a huge problem. Don't let them gaslight you. There is a problem and we need to fix it.
People that earn six figures are not bringing home six figures. And I think y'all have a difficult time understanding that, because people on this app say, oh, you can live off 100K. We're not saying you can't live off 100K. I want y'all to really realize how high the cost of living is. Seriously. Because see, while my gross may be over 100K, I pay almost $500 a pay period in just insurance. Just insurance. Then we have state taxes. Then we have local taxes. Then we have all this other shit that come out your check. I'm not even contributing to retirement because I can't afford it. I can't afford it. I bring home $2,500. $2,250 is rent. So one entire check goes to rent. One check. The other check goes to everything else. Because see, the thing is, y'all can't fathom that people make that much money and still say we live in paycheck to paycheck. And I'm sorry if you make less and you're also struggling, but I really want people to realize the upper middle class is also struggling. We went to school, we went to college, we got the jobs, and we still fucking out here struggling. Just because we make more money, don't try to diminish our struggle. Thank you.
The craziest thing about the system falling apart is that Americans, and I'm going to speak for a large majority of you guys, I'm speaking on y'all behalf, they just want a livable wage. They don't want, it's not like people are out here wanting to be multimillionaires. People are not wanting that. People literally just want to be able to afford things. That's it. And a livable wage. That's it. That's it. All of this conversation, that is the meat of the conversation. People just want to be able to live where they can have their own little place, whether it's an apartment, whether it's a house, and be able to feed their children and send their kids to, daycare, school with affordable prices, and be able to get food affordable. And that's really it. Like, people just, obviously there's, little things like we would like to not be poisoned. We would like to be able to afford, healthcare. But I'm just saying, like, overall, the biggest issue is that we as Americans literally just want things to be livable. That's it. And these billionaires just don't understand that. They think that, like, when we're saying the things that we want, that it's so obscene. But that's literally what most Americans want, just to be able to live pretty comfortably. We don't need to, like, a lot of Americans are not wanting six figures. I'm telling you, most Americans do not.
It's becoming increasingly difficult for me to bite my tongue when I witness the black middle class, semi-privileged black people, and very privileged black people romanticizing poverty. Because it seems to me as though a lot of them do not fully understand how dehumanizing poverty is. For a lot of them, they think that poverty is a minor inconvenience. It's a cheaper way of living. It's a lifestyle where this month we have certain luxuries and next month we deprive ourselves. We skip a couple of months, then we have those luxuries again. When in actuality, there is not a single moment of comfort in poverty. At the time when these privileged black people share their own stories, they will try to dismiss the severity of poverty by saying, well, my mom had 3,000 Rand left in her account in the last few days of the month, but somehow we made it through. That might be uncomfortable, but that's not poverty. Oh, but as a uni student, today we ate burgers, tomorrow I ate noodles. Uncomfortable. Uni student with not a big enough allowance, who's still learning how to manage finances, but not poverty. And they forget that they're tweeting and making videos about this poverty from Blue Valley Golf Estate. You're tweeting and making videos about this poverty from your two-bedroom in Protea Glen. You're tweeting and making videos about this poverty from your apartment in Greenstone. And I'm not saying I wish for your downfall so you can experience it firsthand, but be cognizant of the things around you that make it easy for you to make it seem like living in poverty is easy. Conversation gets a bit more complex and confusing when people start to argue about whether or not people should be mindful of making children when they are living in these extreme conditions of poverty. For a lot of people, they feel like it's eugenics because you are questioning people's right to reproduce. You are questioning people's right to fulfill their sentimental desires. But more importantly, you are trying to eliminate an entire class of people, right? And I will be open and honest and say I fully understand where these people are coming from, and I'm not going to fight that. But my biggest issue is that a lot of the time when you ask certain people to elaborate further on their points, they will say that we are all victims of capitalism, right? Which we are. And we are all not fighting the system of capitalism. We are fighting each other, the victims of it, right? And then when you ask them what is the way forward, these people will behave just like the white capitalists they're fighting against and say, well, as a middle class South African, it's so important for me to be able to have a domestic worker. It's so important. So you are saying that the only reason why you believe poverty should exist is so that you as a black middle class South African can have your shot at exploiting cheap labor? Insane. But when these conversations happen, it makes me realize that a lot of people are not just anti-abortion or pro-life. They're just pro-birth. You're just pro the child being here. But when it comes to the nurturing and the care of this child, you have no desire to lend a helping hand. Because you're not saying it takes a village. You're not even giving it the benefit of the doubt to say they might change the situation. You're just pro-birth. You're pro the child being here. You know, a few weeks ago, I was walking to Loftus from Hatfield around 7 p.m. and there was a little boy on the street. He didn't look older than 5 or 6. And he literally said his mom sent him to look for food. So he was literally asking strangers on the street for money, for donations for food. And obviously, we don't know how much truth is that, but I am choosing to believe him. And that is a perfect example of how these children become the earliest slaves of the system that we're complaining about. These children become the earliest victims of the system. Like, yes, some of us, yes, we're all stuck in the cycle of labor. For some of us, it's our own personal choice of labor because some of us chose what to study. But for a lot of these children, it's not their choice and they are born straight into this labor. Something I also often think about is when there was an argument about who ShopRite's target audience was for the 5 Rand meals. For those of you who are not familiar with ShopRite's 5 Rand meals, they are the cheapest meals, I believe, in the store, and they consist of a lot of typical staples in black households. Pap, mautwana, those type of meals. And let me tell you something. There is a family I know that survived off recycling plastic. And we all know that's like not a guaranteed source of income because there are some people who are not making more than 14 Rand a day. I believe in this family as well, they were making about less than 20 Rand a day. And they were expected to support a family of 4 with less than 20 Rand a day. Now, the other week, I spent 135 Rand on a fucking burger. And there are families in this country that are expected to survive on less than 20 Rand a day. So hypothetically, let's say that 20 Rand is what they can afford to buy that 5 Rand meal. That's a reality for most people. You do realize that, like, Not everyone is scraping to have 3 to 5 meals a day with snacks in between, a protein shake and Greek yogurt. For most people, if they can feed themselves once the entire day, that is their entire meal. If they can feed themselves once, that is it. That is poverty. And we are also forgetting that poverty restricts what you can and can't do for fun. And we also forget that poverty desensitizes a lot of children from sexual acts. Right? I will not argue, because clearly I shouldn't, because we're living in a time where we can't critique anything. Our critique is critiquing things. We critique how people critique things, but we're not allowed to critique anything. I think this is a common misconception of my politics, where people probably think that I assume that people living in poverty have poor sexual discipline, they don't practice safe sex, or that they're promiscuous, when in actual fact, sometimes sex is the only thing poverty lets you do. I'm going to say it again. Sometimes sex is the only thing that poverty lets you do. Sometimes people forget that you live in the square, right? And depending on the sexual partners, you might get fed through them. A loaf of bread, a meal for the day, doesn't matter, right? You live in this bed, you sleep in this bed where everything is all in the same room. Your kids probably sleep on the floor right next to you in that same bed. I can't tell you of how many people who grew up in poverty where people had to sleep in so many cramped spaces together witness the conception of their siblings. I literally have a friend who was in the same bed when their sibling was conceived, because that's what poverty does. There's no luxury to have sex at a better time, at a different time. And I get we're having this conversation about people being deprived of their sentimental desires, of their desires to be human. And that's what happens. That's what happens. Back to the conversation about sentimental desire and living in harmony and comfort. I think it's very naive of you guys to assume that it's easy to live in harmony when you're hungry. You guys forget that some of your mothers seem so maternal, so loving, so kind. The reason why you get along in your home, why even your father's paternal instincts kick in, why it seems as though you have the most perfect relationships with your families, is because you're not hungry. It's because you're not hungry. I think it's very weird that people think you can genuinely live in a happy, healthy home when you are hungry. Domestic violence is heightened by hunger and lack. Child abuse is heightened by hunger and lack. You guys underestimate the fact that you don't fight as often with your parents because you are not hungry. Your emotions aren't constantly heightened. Your stomach isn't constantly grumbling. Your brain isn't constantly fogged because you are not hungry. Like the reason why your mom is your beacon of light and hope, she can fend for you. She's not hungry, you're not hungry. It's easier to not get in each other's hair when you are not hungry. Constantly at that. And so for people to come here and say, oh my gosh, like, just have a baby and all you need to do is focus on loving that baby. Guys, circumstance is sometimes greater than your paternal and maternal instinct. Sorry. When you're cramped in this tiny space, when you have no privacy, when you have no real ownership, where you have no, this is mine, this is mine. La 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 luna. I don't think you guys have witnessed the physical violence that siblings sometimes unleash on each other because of poverty, because of lack, and because of how the world and circumstance and the system quickly makes you a dog eat dog kind of person. You don't. You think you and your sister arguing because she rolled down the window of the backseat of your mom's Range Rover is the worst thing to happen to you? then wait until an older sibling has to ration their meal so that the younger one can be fed. When one person can go to school at a time, where one person can have school uniform, where one person can have a textbook, where one person can walk the distance, where one person can have shoes. Yo.